Good afternoon. Welcome to From Where We Are, stories of news and culture through the lens of USC and Southern California. I'm Elena Stevens, coming to you live from Studio B in USC's Annenberg Media Center.
And I'm Carl Masad. It's November 17th, and on today's show, Waymo's take on LA freeways, new study on data centers in California, and AI ethics. All that and more on
From Where We Are.
The Trump administration has increased pressure on Venezuela, placing an aircraft carrier in the Caribbean on Sunday. The carrier's arrival increases the U.S. military's capability to conduct attacks on Venezuelan territory. The administration also announced that it would designate a Venezuelan group as a foreign terrorist organization. President Trump remains open to the possibility of negotiations with President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela.
The chief of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, has resigned following months of controversy. David Richardson was appointed to lead FEMA in May, despite lacking experience in disaster management, seen as a loyalist to Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. From a June meeting in which he told staff that he was unaware the U.S. had a hurricane season, to his lack of presence following devastating floods in Texas, to informing staff he would run right over anyone who didn't fall in line, Richardson was increasingly treated as a liability by the Department of Homeland Security prior to his resignation on Monday.
At least 7 are dead following California's powerful atmospheric river. Among them are a 7-year-old girl swept into the ocean by heightened waves, her father who died trying to save her, and a 71-year-old man whose vehicle was swept off a flooded bridge. At least 4 others were killed after a wooden boat believed to be carrying migrants from Mexico capsized off the coast of San Diego. A new storm is expected to arrive on Thursday. The Guardian says that due to the climate crisis, warming oceans are supercharging atmospheric river storms, making them more deadly and costly than ever before.
Could LA have its own Democratic Socialist mayor, much like New York's Zohran Mamdani? Ray Huang, community organizer, deputy director of Housing Now California, and member of the Democratic Socialists of America, has announced her campaign for Los Angeles mayor. She aims to expand public housing, make buses free for LA residents, and invest in more unarmed crisis responders, says the LA Times. She faces an uphill battle against incumbent Democrat Mayor Karen Bass, a veteran politician, along with Austin Butner, former LA Unified School District superintendent.
DPS reported a robbery on Sunday afternoon on Figueroa between 28th and 30th Street. Approximately 10 juveniles, estimated between 15 and 19 years old, were riding bikes on Figueroa when, according to DPS, one, quote, forcibly took a cell phone from a pedestrian who was walking and talking on their device. DPS advises people to walk in groups and avoid using cell phones or other technology while walking, as criminals target distracted individuals.
7 people held in California's largest immigrant detention facility in California City sued the federal government last week. The lawsuit alleges they're being held in unstable and inhumane conditions with inappropriate access to what the lawsuit calls basic human needs. MJ has the story.
Imagine being held in a facility where you're denied basic things like medical care, enough food to eat, even soap. These are the conditions that the detainees suing say they're facing inside the California City Detention Facility. The Immigration Detention Center is run by CoreCivic, a private prison company that contracts with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. It currently holds more than 800 people, immigrants who are awaiting or fighting deportation. CoreCivic received $10 million initially for the federal contract and could receive much more. But according to the ACLU, conditions in the detention center are dismal. Kyle Vergine is a senior staff attorney at ACLU National Prison Project. The ACLU is representing plaintiffs in the case.
So we're suing on a number of issues at the facility. They include poor medical care, punitive conditions of confinement, violations of people's rights to accommodations for their disabilities, and violations of people's right to talk to their lawyers.
The lawsuit alleges that health services, including mental health services, are especially lacking.
We have a client who has diabetes and is getting such poor diabetes care that he now has an ulcer on his foot. And even now that he has this open wound on his foot, he's not getting clean bandages or any kind of disinfectant to clean the wound. We have a client who nearly had a heart attack and even still isn't getting medication for his heart condition.
And that's just some of the things the lawsuit alleges detainees are going through. In an email to The Guardian, Homeland Security spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin claimed that the lawsuit's allegations are, quote, false. McLaughlin says detainees are given 3 meals a day and comprehensive medical care. Virginia argues the opposite. He says the Trump administration's focus on immigration raids and ramping up deportations is worsening the situation.
All of this has resulted in a system where the administration is funneling more people into ICE detention. And while it's doing so, it's holding them in poor conditions that are creating a lot of desperation.
The complaint was filed last week. The next step is for the government to respond.
So we'll see what they have to say, and we look forward to getting to fight our case in court.
The vast majority of ICE detention centers around the country are operated by private contractors. 7 of these are in California. The ACLU's California Immigration Detention Database has logged more than 500 grievances filed by detainees at California's ICE detention centers since January 2023. For Annenberg Media, I'm Angelina Lovato.
After several months of saying he was against the release of the files of sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, President Donald Trump told reporters in the Oval Office this morning that he would sign a bill to release the files if it comes across his desk. Here's Natalie Miller with the story.
In a Truth Social post Sunday, President Donald Trump called the push to release the Epstein files a, quote, Democrat hoax, intended to deflect from the great success of the Republican Party. But today, he seems to have changed his mind. Trump made a stunning U-turn, calling the House Republicans to vote yes for the release of all Department of Justice files related to Jeffrey Epstein, insisting, quote, we have nothing to hide. The vote is expected to reach the House floor tomorrow. Matthew Dallek teaches political management at George Washington University.
Well, I think, look, now that Trump has greenlit the release of these files, I would assume that Democrats will vote unanimously to release them and that Republicans may do so as well.
Dallek says there's drama around the impending vote.
My sense is that politically it may be helpful for Trump and Republicans to actually release them. But they've got to release those files now because it's become, their base wants them released.
If the House votes for the release, the bill will go to the president to sign. Trump said at his press conference today in the Oval Office, quote, I'm all for it. Today in Los Angeles, another press conference was held in the office of attorney Gloria Allred. She represents Epstein accuser Alicia Arden. Arden is hoping the files are released soon.
My hope is that finally these files will be released. And those who were complacent in Jeffrey Epstein's crimes will finally be named. And the American public will get the transparency that they've been promised.
Will we? Even if Trump signs the bill, it remains to be seen whether his Department of Justice will actually release the files. For Annenberg Media, I'm Natalie Miller.
Last Friday, California Judge Rita Lynn ruled that President Donald Trump cannot withhold funds or demand payment from the University of California. The preliminary ruling blocked the Trump administration from threatening to cut billions in research funding to coerce UCLA into changing its academic policies. Trump's settlement demand was sent to UCLA in early August. It required the university to enforce a series of restrictions. These included limiting campus protests, denying admission to foreign students with so-called anti-Western sentiment, and forbidding the UCLA healthcare system from performing gender-affirming surgeries. The demand came a few days after Trump froze over $500 million worth of UCLA's health and science research funding. The president froze these funds, citing allegations that the university tolerated anti-Semitism. The Trump administration has repeatedly launched civil rights investigations at top universities. Previously, the administration has paused federal funding at private colleges, including Columbia University. UCLA was the first public university that the administration targeted over allegations of civil rights violations, which for the White House includes the consideration of race and ethnicity in admissions. Lynn's decision is a victory for UC professors, grad students, and scientists who filed the lawsuit. Lynn agreed with them in calling Trump's actions coercive and retaliatory. However, some government lawyers have argued that federal courts lack the power to intervene in decisions that have not yet occurred, including federal funding approval. Like in similar cases, the Trump administration could potentially appeal this preliminary injunction.
Oh, yeah.
After more than 1.9 million miles clocked on the mean streets of LA, Waymo is finally ready to take on our freeways. As of last Wednesday, the autonomous ride-hailing app now welcomes riders to venture onto freeways across Los Angeles, the San Francisco Bay Area, and Phoenix, Arizona. But this is LA. We have crazy busy freeways, traffic jams, and generally stressful roads even for human drivers. How will a Waymo react under the high-pressure conditions of driving on the 405 or I-10? We talked to a few USC students who've taken Waymos around town. Here's what they had to say.
I have taken one once. It was about 2 weeks ago. It was quite literally the worst experience of my life.
There needs to be more testing and troubleshooting with the Waymos that were already just on the regular streets, because there have been accidents and problems with the Waymos already.
The Waymo would merge very quickly or roughly and scare us in the backseat.
We just heard from USC juniors and Waymo riders Ruth Etok, Autumn DeBonnet, and Melanie Saavedra. If these their experiences are any indication, Waymo may face a long road ahead as it merges onto LA freeways.
Every time you use ChatGPT or any other AI, data centers use electricity, a lot of electricity, to make the internet run. That electricity generation needs to be cooled, and so they use water for that. You guessed it, a lot of water, which is a scarce resource in California. Nina Kremer looks at possible problems with the data centers.
Health impacts, including respiratory and cardiac issues caused by California's data centers, tripled from 2019 to 2023, according to a report from researchers at UC Riverside. The report goes on to say that if lawmakers do not regulate the data center's energy usage, the health impacts could rise by about 70% in the next few years. UC Riverside professor Xiaolei Zhen co-authored the study. He says that these data centers can have a huge impact on the surrounding environment and community.
The growth of data center industry in California has still increased the environmental impacts, including the carbon emission, the water consumption, and also public health impact.
USC professor of environmental engineering and a former White House advisor on energy, Kelly Sanders, says these generators that power the data centers pollute.
A stable electricity supply is absolutely critical to these data centers, and so they put diesel generation at their data centers so that if there's some sort of power outage or some sort of disruption to power service in any sort of way, they can turn on those diesel generators, which are burning a really dirty fuel that produces pollution that impacts local communities.
The UC Riverside researchers say it is difficult to access the information necessary to report on the impacts of the data centers because of a lack of transparency. Last month, Governor Newsom vetoed a bill that would require data centers to disclose their water usage. Sanders explains why lawmakers might be hesitant to impose such regulations.
These tech companies and data center builders, they have a lot of political lobbying power. If you look at the S&P, the top 7 companies are tech companies, and they're holding up a lot of the growth that we see. And so because of that, lawmakers, they want to work with these tech companies. And I don't think because of that, we've been as aggressive with regulatory environment as we maybe can be.
The report recommends lawmakers phase out the diesel generators, set emission standards that prioritize clean power, and publicly disclose how much water and energy they use. Sanders emphasizes the importance of this final step.
It's in the best interest of everybody to demand more transparency for reporting electricity usage and water usage.
Moving forward, as AI usage increases and these data centers are expected to continue to pollute the environment, health impacts from them could impose an ever larger cost on the community. For Annenberg Media, I'm Nina Kremer.
Today, an AI ethics discussion was held at USC's Caprielian Hall. The panel included 4 USC professors of mathematics who talked about the concerns of artificial intelligence and how they have changed the profession. The panelists also discussed how to use technology responsibly by using it as a supplement and not a replacement for getting their math assignments done faster. This discussion comes after USC's AI Summit last Tuesday, where a partnership between the university and OpenAI was announced. This union would provide all USC students, faculty, and staff full access to GPT-5, the tech company's newest model. Annenberg Media's Celine Agahi attended the event and spoke with Assistant Professor of Mathematics, Stephen Heilman.
Hello, today I'm here with Stephen Heilman, Assistant Professor of Mathematics. Stephen, thank you for joining us today. To start off, after being part of this discussion, what stood out to you the most? Were there any questions in the audience that maybe stood out to you, or ways that people are thinking about AI?
Sort of the usual things of AI replacing people's jobs. There's always that concern, especially in any sort of profession, but also as teachers at a university. People definitely are concerned with that. Also, just being replaced in our research capacity and sort of solving problems. But just the sort of general gist of grappling with how these technologies are sort of changing our profession.
I know you also mentioned the possibility of AI solving these famous problems that are known to not yet be solved.
Say Google declares, we solved this, some major open problem, but it's the solution either, they just say, well, it's true and we can't disclose some of the details, or they do disclose the details, but it's 10,000 pages of, barely decipherable, really technical details. So then the question becomes well, what would that mean for us in the profession? What would that mean just for us now? What would that mean for the future of our profession?
There seems to be a tension building between students and their reliance on AI, and that begins to influence their own voice and identity and thinking. How do you foresee this playing out in the classroom, and how should educators approach this?
It's a tough question to answer, because on the one hand, it makes using homework as an assessment, it makes it sort of difficult, if not impossible, to really use homework and say, oh, if this person did well in the homework, then they understand. If this person didn't do well in the homework, then they need more attention. They need to work harder on this, that, and the other thing. Nowadays, it's sort of different. You can't reliably use homework as an assessment. The purpose of doing homework and exercises it's like exercise for your brain. And if you take yourself away from doing those exercises, it's you're sort of doing harm to yourself. The students that are maybe struggling in a class might feel tempted to take those shortcuts and therefore deprive themselves of learning correctly. So the responsibility is certainly partly on the teachers to design assessments to keep in mind what tools are available to the students, but I guess also to encourage students to be realistic about what it means to do homework, why it's important, and why you shouldn't take shortcuts to your own in ways that don't help you.
But there was a lot of conversation about the balance between keeping AI systems open and accessible while also ensuring safety and accountability, as we were discussing. Do you have an opinion about how universities should navigate that balance, especially as technology becomes more embedded in academic work?
We should encourage people to, if maybe do official training or some sort of safety awareness or safety training.
And from your perspective, as USC is building this connection with OpenAI, what questions should students and faculty, the USC community, be asking as this partnership develops and becomes embedded in our day-to-day?
I'll say some people are skeptical of why, what do these tech companies have to gain from doing these sorts of things, right? And so if you take sort of a pessimistic perspective, you might say, well, the goal could be to get people hooked on using these tools and then raise the prices so that, you sort of rely on, you can't do without them in your professional life. To a certain extent, some things like that are already true, right? You think about like software packages, often they're given at a discount to, universities. You get used to them as a student, you get the student discount, and then the hope is that, when you go into the real world, then, you'll be so used to using it that you need to encourage your company to pay, a lot more money to continue using that tool. And so at least for me, that's one concern. That's sort of what the tech companies would like to have happen, right?
So, as my final question, I'll ask, what is like one piece of advice or one practical guideline for using AI ethically and responsibly that you would share with students?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, say you're doing your homework or whatever, first, the ideal situation is first you try to do it the old-fashioned way. You think about it, use a book, talk to people, try to keep it old-fashioned. And then once you've done those, come to office hours, and then after you've exhausted those, quote-unquote old school resources, then sure, maybe you could use the internet. Then if you can't get your answer from the internet, maybe, then you use your AI tool, like to go back to my previous analogy, like, schoolwork is like exercise for your brain, and you want to get your brain in shape. People in a classroom talking about things, working through issues, talking with your friends, doing homework, like as a social activity, it's worked. And we don't have to, the other things are like a supplement, not a replacement.
Yeah, I mean, this is an ongoing discussion that the whole of the USC community should be in the loop about. So that's why we thank you for joining us today, Stephen, and sharing your perspective on it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And that's all we have time for on today's From Where We Are. Natalia Fierro Gomez and Amy Contreras produced today's show. We had help from Grant Franey, Naji Joseph, Charlotte Bota, and Nicholas Corral.
Our board operator is Grayson Salomon, our live stream manager is Kayla Zhu, and Derek Renfrau composed our theme music.
Catch us live on YouTube at Annenberg Radio News, Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Subscribe to From Where We Are wherever you're listening right now. Finally, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Annenberg Radio. I'm Elena Stevens.
And I'm Carl Masad. From all of us at Annenberg Radio, wherever you are, we hope you'll join us again for
From Where We Are.
I don't really even use ChatGPT, because that goes against academic integrity.
Well, I don't even use the internet, because that's against my morals.
Really? Well, I don't even use a textbook.
Well, I don't...
You just look in your brain?
Yeah, I just look in my brain. I don't even consult with anyone.
Well, what am I going to say next?
See you next week, everybody!
Thank you for listening in.